Um, uh, hi Emmanuel Eben. So I and bonsoir tout le monde. Grüezi miteinander. So it's nice to be here. It's a bit strange to speak English with a Swiss audience, but hopefully the I will speak slowly enough. I know normally I speak fast. It's very nice to be with all of you. It's nice to see all of you this evening. And I think I quite found myself my feelings reflected in other people's statements because I'm fine personally. I'm sitting in my nice place. I'm drinking my nice cup of tea. I'm talking to nice people. My life is good in general, but it's also true that I know what's coming. I see what's coming around me, and we're constantly getting news of things getting worse and worse and worse. And we know that we're losing a lot and we're facing risks, and that a lot of things that should and could be happening are not happening if because of various actors in the economy and in our politics stopping them from happening. So that's very frustrating. And I think, so then it's a mixture of scared and angry. So all of these things together. And also I recognize myself in Amina, who said annoyed. That's also a very frequent feeling, I must say.
Thank you for sharing all this. So we were mentioning how we were inspired by this situation, the lack of snow in the mountains, and this let's say increasing temperature in winter. Our first general question would then be, how is this linked to the more global situation, and how is this linked to human activities? Do we have anything to do with that?
Yes, so at this point, it's actually quite simple. So the lack of snow is due to global warming. So the warmer the temperatures, the less snow there is at altitude and also in the global north in terms of the Arctic and the Antarctic. So both of the ice caps that sort of keep our planet at our nice temperate regimen. So the warmer the planet, the less snow and the less ice there is. And this is very simple. It basically means that as the temperature of the whole planet warms up on average, we see Switzerland moving into a climate that would have been more like what we would have seen south, like, in Italy or the Mediterranean region. So we're sort of moving away from what the Swiss climate was. And we know that basically a lot of the Swiss glaciers are doomed to disappear. And this has major consequences for our ecosystems. So one of the things it means, by the way, is that for species that live in these colder areas of our mountains, they basically, whether they're plants or animals, they basically get squeezed off the top of the mountain, right? That the warm area is coming towards them and they have nowhere to go. So this is a disaster for our ecosystems. It's a disaster also for our way of life. What we're used to Switzerland being. Switzerland is not the same as what it was when I was growing up, for sure. One of the reasons I exist is because my father fell into a crevasse and survived. But he was a it's good for him. But he and it was when he fell into the crevasse and spent, a few hours or minutes or whatever it was in the crevasse, that getting hauled up, that he decided that he wanted my mother decided that she wanted to have children. She didn't want to be left alone because the next time he fell into a crevasse, he might not come back out. So I owe my existence to a glacier that no longer exists because that area is just has no more snow left. And so all of this climate change and all of this warming is due to human activity. And that human activity is burning so burning fossil fuels, leading to the emission of greenhouse gases. So we've been burning coal, fossil gas, and oil. And all of those things create CO2, and the CO2 goes into the atmosphere and basically acts like a blanket. It basically means that the earth is heated by the sun and has to keep all of that heat more and more and more. So it's basically every time we put greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, we're basically wrapping another layer of blanket around the planet, and it's getting hotter and hotter and hotter. This is a very long-term thing. These gases will stay in the atmosphere for hundreds of years. So we know that we're doing this durably. And even if we stopped emitting tomorrow, if our emissions went to zero tomorrow, what our temperature would stabilize. It would not go down. And that's another thing that I think that many politicians and people don't understand is that everything is going to get worse and worse and worse until our emissions get to zero. The other causes of climate change are agriculture, especially animal agriculture and rice, because they produce methane, and deforestation and land use change. So agriculture is another big driver of climate change, along with fossil fuel burning. It's roughly, 2/3, 1/3 kind of thing. Yeah, so, and it's all us. So we know this very, very clearly. We have zero doubts about it. The scientific community is entirely unified on this topic.
I see. One of the things that sometimes I struggle to explain when talking to people, to friends, is how to keep in mind both elements of the equation, because you mentioned there's an average increase in temperature, but at times there's also extreme events that can be
Yeah.
like extremely cold and extremely warm, and people think but they will average out. So how are these extremes linked to the global warming?
That's a really good question. And it's really important to talk about that because probably the biggest dangers in terms of human health and the stability of our societies have to do less with the average warming, which is bad. It's terrible. It's a catastrophe. But the extremes are probably even worse in terms of their impact. And the extremes, one of the ways you can understand it is that when we're heating the atmosphere of the planet, we're basically pouring energy into the system. And you could think of it as pouring a giant bag of candy into a room with 6-year-olds, right? You're pouring sugar into there, and they're going to start jumping up and down and going crazy. And that's sort of what we're seeing happening on a planetary level with the weather. Is that we're seeing all of this energy resulting in more extreme events. So it's not just that the average is going up, it's that everything is sort of going crazy around it and becoming much more unstable. And one of the things I think is really important to understand is that stability is what human society is made of. So human beings, Homo sapiens, have been around for maybe 250,000 years. That's not a very interesting fact to know. Um, but what's interesting to know maybe is that during that time, the Earth was had very unstable temperatures. It was going through ice ages and then warming up a bit and then going back through ice ages. And that was very uncomfortable for Homo sapiens. In fact, we almost went extinct 2 ice ages ago, according to some genetic records. But for the last 12,000 years, since the end of the last ice age, something rather magical happened to the planet. I mean, we know how to explain it because we know the physics of the planet, but all of a sudden the planet stabilized at a warm temperature. That was not an ice age. And that temperature has been very, very stable. So our climate has been very, very stable. And that allowed us to do things like develop agriculture. So develop the kinds of plants that grow in that little temperature range that we're used to. Like, corn and wheat and rice and potatoes and all of that great stuff that we eat. Really depends on Holocene temperatures. So that those 12,000 years are known as the Holocene. And when we're destabilizing the Earth system, we're basically changing the whole state of the planet away from the state that allowed us as Homo sapiens human beings to live in a good and um, uh, predictable way, let's say. And if you think about the extreme events, let's just talk about three kinds of extreme events. Um, um, Floods, droughts, and heat waves. So those are sort of the main three ones. Now, heat waves, you can sort of imagine that if you're warming up the planet, you're going to have more and more heat waves. So canicule in French, right? And those heat waves are going to be, so this is something we know because we're already seeing it. The heat waves, every single heat wave on the planet that's happening now is supercharged by climate. It's longer, more intense, more frequent due to climate change, due to global warming. And this is very dangerous because we know that our climates, our architecture, our technologies are used to certain climates, and are is possible for other people to live in hotter climates. Although when you're talking about the Gulf and Kuwait, we're really talking at the very edge of what, societies can expect to withstand. And heating those places is probably a very bad idea. But our architecture is not like, North Africa. So our cities are not built to reflect sunlight, produce lots of shade, etc. So we are very vulnerable to heat waves. because they're happening in a way that they used not to, and they're very, very deadly. They have all kinds of other problems with them, like air pollution, and they're just very deadly events. The second kind of event is flooding. And flooding is very easy to understand. Every time the atmosphere warms by 1 degree, you can fit more humidity into it. Every degree is 7% more humidity. And since we're already warmed by 1.5 degrees, when you can sort of double that, it's somewhere between 2 and 3 degrees over the land mass. That's a lot of extra water in the atmosphere, and it dumps all at once. You just get like the skies opening and dumping huge amounts of water on places. So most recently in Europe, we saw it in Valencia, but we've seen it in Belgium, we've seen it in Germany. We're seeing it all over the world. We saw it in Greece, absolutely devastating in Libya. So we're seeing these huge floods coming, and those we know are just going to be with us forever. Because we're already at this level of warming, they're only going to get worse. And our infrastructure is not ready for them. Our drainage pipes, if you live in a house, are not ready for them. Our sewage systems are not ready for them. Our rivers and waterways are not ready for them. And because our infrastructure is so hard in cities, the water just rushes through and accumulates in places, and places like parking lots or certain streets just become death zones. And those are very dangerous. And also they're very destructive to agriculture. And the third one is droughts, which is huge periods without rain. And then you get huge amounts of forest fires and much longer fire seasons in places like Canada, Australia, the US, etc. So those are sort of the main extreme events, and they are extremely dangerous. I should say we can be proud to be Swiss, or to be in Switzerland. One of the main scientists who studies and models extreme events is Professor Sonja Seneviratne at ETH Zurich, and she is contributed to the IPCC Working Group 1 with like probabilistic maps where you can see the higher frequency, the higher probability of an extreme event all over the world. So different areas of the world are touched in different ways. Europe, it turns out, is one of the few areas of the world that gets more heat waves, more flooding, and more droughts. So we're going to see more of all of these events right where we are living right now. Yeah.
Great, thanks for pointing this out. I think is indeed an element that sometimes people miss, that things are going to happen even here in Europe and not just in other continents, and the extent to which we need to be ready for that. Okay, so you mentioned the working group 1 for the IPCC, while you were involved in working group 3, which basically answered the question, okay, what are we going to do? So what can you tell us? What are we going to do? And maybe a bit more technical for those who know, what is the difference between climate adaptation and climate mitigation? What are the kind of measures that we can take, and maybe what is Switzerland doing in these two directions?
Yeah, great. So these are great questions. So adaptation is maybe the simpler one is to think about, which is we know the warming is happening. How do we protect ourselves from the warming and from the impacts of these extreme events? And so adaptation basically means being more careful. For instance, if you have flooding problems, then you would try to think about how you would design your cities to suffer less from flooding. So a really big thing that's really going to be important in Switzerland, because we are the country of Le Corbusier and have been putting concrete everywhere, is we're going to have to dig up that concrete and the asphalt and start making our infrastructure porous. That's a really important adaptation measure in order to allow, for instance, the flooding waters to go into the soil and not just rush into the cities. Also to allow, make our cities greener so that the air is cooler, because trees and vegetation cool the air, so it protects us during heat waves. So it's basically adaptation is about protecting us from the warming that's already here and the warming that we expect. Now, the problem with adaptation is it doesn't always happen. So I think Switzerland and Europe in general have not been thinking enough about adaptation, because I think there was really this illusion that climate change would be not so bad here. but it's going to be very bad everywhere. So I think we need to be doing a lot more of adaptation. There's also maladaptation, which is where you adapt for one impact of climate, but you're causing other problems. So let's say if your solution against flooding is to put more concrete stuff everywhere, then we know that concrete also creates emissions, and so that will make the problem worse. Or so you can have ways of adaptation that are better or worse. The other thing to understand, and this is really important, no person who works on adaptation, no single scientist or policymaker or anybody thinks that adaptation is going to be enough. We cannot adapt our way out of this. We don't, the technologies that we have will not protect us. They will not protect us from the impacts. And so adaptation is important. It's vital. It'll save lives, but it's really not enough. We need to get our emissions down to zero. And that's where mitigation comes in. So mitigation is how do we move our societies, our economies, and our technologies away from emitting greenhouse gases. And there's some ways that are pretty simple. This is pretty taboo in Switzerland, but there's one solution that every single person who has looked at this agrees. There is, again, widespread scientific consensus. This is not a mystery. In the agricultural sector, we need to stop eating meat. We need to stop eating animal products, certainly as much as we do now. Let's say cut them down by 90% and see how you keep going from there. So it basically means that we move towards plant-based diets. And plant-based diets are this one is really good actually because plant-based diets are tasty, they're delicious. You need to learn a bit. It does take a little bit of culture change, so I wouldn't recommend trying to do it all at once unless you like that kind of challenge. But it's something that certainly can be done, and it's also very good for human health. We know that in industrial societies and more around the world, people are eating diets that are very unhealthy. So plant-based diets are really a win-win in terms of health and in terms of climate. The other things that we need to do are in terms of our energy system, we need to move away from fossil fuels and towards renewables. That comes with all kinds of issues as well because renewables, take resources, they take space, and they also come with technologies like storage, batteries, which involves lithium and other rare earth metals. So this is not they're great solutions, they're fantastic, but we should not be trying to replace a huge wasteful system by another huge wasteful system. And this is where energy sufficiency, or in French, sobriété énergétique, and I don't know what it is in German, maybe Suffizienz, comes into play. And so that means that we should be using as much as we need, but not more. And that means that we should also have less, we don't want underconsumption, we don't want people to be deprived, but we also don't want overconsumption. We don't want people to be using more than their fair share, because this has really impacts on people and on ecosystems and the planet. So that means that mitigation also means reducing inequality, and it also means moving towards sufficiency. And moving towards sufficiency actually means investment. It means changing the shape of our economies. It means moving our economies towards activities that allow us to live well and not use so much resources. And that's things like housing retrofit, that's renovate, right? That's why we were doing in Renovate Switzerland. This is a really important economic activity for us to do. If we invest in buildings and renovation and efficient buildings, the amount of energy we need is so much less than what we're using now. Another one is moving away from private vehicles towards public transportation, towards bicycling, scootering. Microelectric mobility is great. That's fine. But just buying a big Tesla car is not, or any other electric car, unless you really, really need it, like because you're disabled or your job requires it. That is not the solution. Also, if it's a Tesla, it will get set on fire. This is a guarantee. Right now, that's sort of the way things are going. So these are some of the things that we're talking about in mitigation, is these combinations of technology, how fast they can be brought into play, how do they work together, and what kind of investments we need to do to get there. And one of the things that is more and more clear is that mitigation requires changing the shape of our economies, changing the way we produce, changing the way we consume, changing inequality, changing the way we work and live. So it's a big change. But the other thing that we can see is that it's a positive change, because we have the possibility of living well within planetary boundaries. We know this now. We have done the research. And it's really a question of getting there. And the problem is the obstacles, who are the existing industries that current benefit from our current way of doing things. That's the biggest problem.
I think you have mentioned so many important keywords, and I would like to dive a bit more into some of them. You've mentioned sobriety, sufficiency. You've mentioned planetary boundaries, planetary limits, well-being, and basically advocating for a structural change at all different levels. So basically, these means that we cannot continue with business as usual, basically the economy as we've always done it, which, if I picture it in my mind, is sort of two axes with time and economy. That could be either the gross world product increasing over time, this endless growth, this curve that keeps going up. And like all of our society, many elements of it are based on this constant growth. And so as soon as you ask for a different system, people just take you as crazy because there's no alternative system. So I'm asking you, the expert in this room, which alternatives we have, which other system exists different than this?
So a lot of other systems exist, and in fact, our current system is made also of those systems and could not exist without them. So there would be other ways to run the economy, and there would be other ways to run production and consumption, and to have, quite well functioning economies and societies. So we know this, and this is the job of ecological economics. So my field of economics, and where we really try to take the role of human society within the planet and ecosystems seriously. So we know this is entirely possible. We know it's technically possible. We know it's economically possible. We know it's possible in terms of, we're starting to understand how it's possible in terms of work and workplaces and who should be doing which jobs. So these are things that we're just on the, we're getting towards. But possible for sure. However, the problem is what is not possible. There are some things that are not possible within this other future system. And in particular, what's not possible is wealth accumulation, and basically making profits off of things that should be available at low cost to everybody. So basically making profits off of people's human needs and the things that they really need to live good lives. That's not going to be compatible with living well within planetary limits. And so basically it's a power struggle. We're facing a power struggle between the actors in the economy that would want to keep making these kinds of profits and maintaining inequality. And it goes way back. So the fossil fuel industry has always been on the side of inequality and always been on the side of, making sure that they can get these really, really huge profits, regardless of what they do, and basically the interests of everybody else. And so it's really this kind of power struggle. But another economic system would be entirely possible. It would be more democratic. It's quite likely that we would have to work less. Although at some point we also have to do all of these investments and all of these jobs that we need to do to change our system. But it's not, it would be more healthy, it would be more comfortable, but it would involve destroying the power base of these main forces in the economy. And that's basically the major struggle of our time.
So this is why we face so much opposition to system change, I guess. Okay,
Absolutely.
I could keep asking questions forever, but I don't want to take too much space. So I open the floor for question. Feel free to ask any curiosity you might have related to the climate crisis, to different economical systems, to the IPCC, whatever. You can either raise your hand and ask your question out loud or write in the chat. I will read it for you if it's in English. Otherwise, Marie will please read it if it's in French or German. I also saw there was maybe already a question, rice question mark, in the chat. I don't remember when that was.
I do. I can say the rice thing if you want. Yeah. So that was Marion. So the reason that rice emits a lot of greenhouse gases, rice culture, is because rice is grown in water, right? It's grown in rizière, rice paddies. And the thing with the little creatures that live in the water, the little bacteria, is they digest, their digestion, the way they metabolize things is anaerobic. That means it's without oxygen. And that means that instead of emitting CO2 as a bacteria that lives with oxygen, they emit CO2, which is, it's a greenhouse gas, but it's not the worst greenhouse gas. The ones that live underwater emit methane, and methane is an extremely potent greenhouse gas. So it's the same thing as natural gas, right? Methane. And so basically, you get a lot of emissions from methane from rice paddies. And this is the same reason that you get a lot of emissions of methane from cows and ruminants, is because their stomachs have lots of little creatures in them that are doing anaerobic digestion, and they emit methane as a result. So it has to do with creatures doing that. Yeah. It's biology. It's
Yes.
mildly interesting if you care about that stuff.
Personally, I study microbiology, so I do care, and I
Yeah.
like those little creatures, but they can be dangerous at large scale. Okay, so Irene is asking how to force the government to make the right decisions. Do you think, Julia?
Um, so that's a good question. Um, so one of the things to understand, I think, is that governments have been forced to make the wrong decisions, and people have been forced to make the wrong decisions. So uh, we come from um, we live within economic systems, within societies that have been very oriented. I don't want to say controlled, but it's pretty close to controlled by very strong actors within the economy. And I'm talking about the fossil fuel industry. I'm talking about, for instance, there's sort of this alliance between the fossil fuel industry, the billionaires that the fossil fuel industry created. So I'm talking about Rockefeller with Standard Oil. I'm talking about the Koch brothers with Koch Industries. ExxonMobil is a big player here as well. So they've been funding ways of thinking and ways of learning. So they've literally been funding how people learn about education, about how people learn about economics. So how people learn economics in school, in secondary school, including in Switzerland. I mean, this is really extraordinary. We have these think tanks, members of the Atlas Network, developing school curricula and developing these materials, and they really influence the way that people learn and think about the economy. And that includes politicians, but it also includes citizens. The way that Swiss children learn about the economy, and you can see this at every vote when Économie Suisse says vote a certain way, the way that Swiss children learn about the economy and secondary school, so for the Mathieu, is they learn that competition in the markets and profit maximization lead to the best social outcomes, um, which is a certain version of economics, but it's not the only version of economics. However, it's the only version that Swiss children learn. And that really implants in their brain when they're still quite young, 15, 16 years old. It implants in their brain this vision that, okay, we need competition for prosperity. We need profit accumulation for prosperity. And every time Économie Suisse says, oh, this will hurt the Swiss economy, then all Swiss citizen thinks, oh no, this will hurt me. This will hurt our society. I should vote the responsible way. Um, and so our whole societies have been oriented, and this is not a conspiracy theory. There's proof for all of this. They've really been oriented for over 100 years at this point, and even more strongly since the 1950s and the development of the Mont Pelerin Society. So the Mont Pelerin Society, the Mont Pelerin is very close to us here in Romandie. It's right above Vevey or Montreux, I forget, sorry, I should know that. And the Mont Pelerin Society were these neoliberal economists, including Friedrich Hayek and later Milton Friedman, and they really had a worldwide influence in terms of having this alliance with the fossil fuel industry and changing the way our governments and our societies think and do things. And so to some extent, we have to take that thinking out of our economy, of our societies, and we really have to tell our politicians that they could and should be doing things differently. But one of the things to understand is that our whole political system and thinking about the economy has been influenced by economists whose main funders were the fossil fuel industry. And this has been going on since, at this point, over something like 80 years.
There are two follow-up questions on these. You briefly touch on it, but they address more the population side. So Catherine asks, why does the majority of the people keep voting for parties who do not care about the environment? And then Julia is asking, most of us who are here understand the importance of living more sustainably and adopting sufficiency lifestyle. How can we make the rest of the population, so who's not in this room tonight, understand the urgency and how to convince them to adopt the same life without it feeling like a burden? And then Philippe, I'll go back to your question after this.
So thanks, Catherine. So I think one of the things that I think history is really important to understand these trends. So for Catherine's question, one of the things that the fossil fuel industry did is they commissioned the very first studies on the economics of acting on climate. Already in the 1980s and 1990s, they commissioned this company called Charles River Associates, and they asked this company to only calculate the cost of acting on climate and not the benefits. So, and this is something that still continues to this day in terms of the IPCC models that I was involved in terms of my chapter. They still only calculate the costs of climate action and not the benefits. And this is a terrible, terrible thing. It's really a crime in terms of giving advice to policymakers. It's or to anybody. It's kind of useless. But I think that one of the reasons that people are voting for these other parties is because they of this sort of propaganda effort, this very successful propaganda effort of portraying climate action as only cost and no benefit. So it's not seen as an investment. It's not seen as, giving us the possibility to stay on a living planet and live well. So they've really succeeded in making the propaganda about it's going to cost a lot of money, it's going to be unpleasant. Anyway, it's probably not even real. It's just these evil people who are trying to scare you for no good reason. So they have all these sort of, we call them discourses of delay, arguments just to get people to switch off and not care anymore. And they're successful in that. And I think that one of the big challenges is to make it visible to our politicians and to the rest of our societies that acting on climate is necessary and actually really positive, that it is investment. It's investment in the future, it's investment in our own lives, it's investment in our safety, it's investment in our health. It's going to look good and feel good very soon. As we're going to benefit quite quickly from it, and that it's something that's possible, necessary, should be kind of fun, and it's necessary, but it's also going to be something that benefits us. And I think that the propaganda has been entirely successful on the other side, which maybe brings us to Julia's question about sufficient lifestyles. So I think sufficient lifestyles are very good. I try to lead one myself to some extent. I try to eat vegan. I try to certainly vegetarian, by bike, I go by train, etc. Like I don't fly anymore, all of those things, right? And um, and that's fine. And I live a very good life and I'm very comfortable and very happy and healthy and everything is great. So I don't mind this at all. But I think that putting the burden of sufficiency on individuals is in some cases necessary, but we shouldn't make it seem as though that's all we're talking about, because the burden of sufficiency is really, it's a social direction. What we see for it to be possible for people to live good lives at lower resource use, so good lives within planetary boundaries, the single most important thing that we see that allows people to do that, when we look at the international data and also when we do modeling, is public services. It's public infrastructure. It's access to electricity, access to network infrastructure, communication, sanitation, transportation. It's access to excellent public infrastructure and public services. This is really what matters the most. And I think that George Monbiot's idea of private frugality, so private sufficiency and public luxury, is maybe something that we should be talking about more. So what matters is for people to be able to live their own lives at less resource use is when their whole society is helping them do that and making those conditions possible for them. And then they're able to do it and they're fine, and they might not even notice that they're doing it. But we need society-wide massive investment in housing renovation, retrofit efficiency, in public transportation, and making bicycling safe. We need these investments. And then, of course, people will just do it and they don't even think about it anymore. And also, we need to invest in making it okay for people not to eat meat. This is something to learn. It is not so easy when you've been eating a certain way all your life. And I mean, I'm half Jewish. I come from a Jewish family. Food is love, right? There is nothing more emotional than food. And if the people you love have always fed you this food, all of a sudden somebody telling you don't eat this food, that is actually not so comfortable. It feels hurtful. And so I think we just need to be aware that there are all these things going on and just say, okay, we're going to think about a way that you can eat something similar. You can still keep your tradition. You can still keep all of this. But we're going to try it a different way. We're going to have to try to change things because otherwise, all the things we love won't be there for us anymore. So, yeah. So I think a sufficient lifestyle is really important, but we can't individualize this problem. It's about collective choices and investments and possibilities.
Great. So I see questions are accumulating. I go back to Philippe's question, who was asking how urgent is the situation for ensuring a livable environment for our children and grandchildren. So let's say the next two generations.
Everything's very urgent, and everything's going sort of in the wrong direction. I mean, unless Trump succeeds in crashing the world economy and in causing lots of destruction and misery, then that might, I don't know. That's the only, that's sort of a joke. I would not really want that. But the situation is very urgent. We need to act as quickly as possible, obviously. However, I really want to push back against this idea that there will be a time when it is not worth acting. It will always be worth doing something. It will always be worth doing everything we can because this is a problem that only gets worse. So everything we do at every second is saving some lives or some possibility of life in the future. And there's going to be a lot of destruction. Sadly, a lot of people are dying. A lot of people are going to die. A lot of people's lives, in terms of children and grandchildren, I have a child as well. And other children I love, even if they weren't my children. Their lives are going to be harmed by this. Like their life chances are going to be harmed. And the way we create space for their life chances and for their well-being is we do as much as we can now, every day. We just keep doing it. And that's sort of our job. We should be thinking if, are we doing the right thing? Could we be doing things better? Could we be doing things more effectively? There will never be a time when it's not worth acting.
Great. And on this point, someone is acting, China. Claudia points out that China is seemingly putting effort towards investing in sustainable energy transition. What do you think about that?
So I think that China is doing a lot of things. But China is a bit like the US. Um, they're having sort of an all of the above approach. So they're doing a lot of renewables, but they're still having a lot of coal-fired power plants. They're doing a lot of reforestation and ecosystem regeneration, which they see as very important to face climate change. But they're also doing a lot of industrialization and overproduction and overconsumption, right? So they're doing a lot of different things, and the coherence of it is not clear in terms of climate. I guess the other thing I should say in terms of China is that maybe one of the things I should say both for China and for the US before Trump, Trump being, yeah, very, very unfortunate. But before Trump, both China and the US were doing something that Europe and Switzerland have forgotten to do, which is industrial policy, which is basically you could have it for an industry you don't like fossil fuels, or the car industry, or the airline industry, or you could have it for an industry that you really think is important, like renewable energy or reforestation, nature-based solutions or whatever, but they were capable of having a direction and saying, for the next 5 years, 10 years, we're going to be investing in this direction. We're going to make it possible for this industry and for this direction to develop itself. And we're going to create conditions that are favorable for this one and unfavorable for that one. And that's, you know, you could call it, it's not really, it's a form of planning. And it's something that in Europe we used to do, but we've sort of forgotten how to do. And both Switzerland and the new European Commission, they're talking about competitiveness. They're talking about the market and technology as though the market would create everything magically. That is not the truth. That has never been the truth. And I think that industrial policy is something that we should really take very seriously in demanding that our governments play this role of doing industrial policy right. And that's something that China does beautifully. They do industrial policy all day, every day, and they do a great job. And we should try to do that as well because it really benefits them. The other thing I should say about China is the other thing I should say about China is that they are conducting genocide of the Uyghur people, including mass incarceration of hundreds of thousands of people in work camps, including making solar panels. So that's one of the industries that we know that the Uyghur are forced to work on in these forced labor camps. And obviously, this is not anything that anybody should want to be associated with, is mass human rights violations. That's just not okay.
Thank you for shining light on this. Going back to the perception of the situation, David asks, in your opinion, how has the perception of climate change and its consequences changed in the last 5 years, both in the scientific community and in the civilian population?
I don't know how everybody's opinions have changed. I think that some people, I mean, I think one of the things we've seen in the opinion polls is that the concern for climate really went up with the student strike mobilizations and Extinction Rebellion worldwide. So there was really this phenomenon of people really caring about climate. And I think people still do, and they're much more aware of it as a problem. But I think that people are disillusioned because they didn't see a political solution emerging. And I think people maybe didn't understand that this wasn't just like, oh, I'm aware of this, I care about this, now it will be solved. It's really a fight of power. So unless we form movements, organizations, political parties, whatever you want, that are capable of confronting these major industries and super powerful forces in our economy, we will keep on losing forever. And so it's a political and economic problem, much more than a technological one or sort of awareness or enlightenment. And I think that so a lot of climate activists are starting to be aware of this. So for instance, I was involved with Extinction Rebellion from, the very beginning. And I've seen Extinction Rebellion evolve from saying, oh, we have to be beyond politics, to having much more of an interest in, okay, which political forces are doing what is actually really happening in the economy, and having things like development, like money rebellion and so on, trying to call for changes within the economy. So I think there's much more awareness that this is a political and economic problem, not just an awareness and technology problem.
And we also have two bit more technical question related to how things could evolve. Claudia asks if we all become vegan, so we stop consuming animal product. What about the domestic animals? Cows, pigs, hens, basically our pets. What would happen to them? Do they still count in the equation? And how do we control their growth? And Nicole has a different question, but still related to future scenarios. Quelle réflexion par rapport au tourisme et à l'industrie de l'adrénaline? So, what about tourism and extreme sport industry or adrenaline industry?
Okay. Yeah, so okay. So the vegan one, I think one of the things to understand is that we have the fossil fuel industry is not the only ones doing propaganda. Also, the agribusiness industry has given us this image of the nice farm with the nice cows and the nice pigs. Each farm has one of each animal or something. And this is not reality. So meat is a horrible business. It's industrial scale. It's these huge factories. So the vision you have of the nice little farm is absolutely not representative of the meat industry. And in terms of the lives of those animals, they are not you know, the animals that exist, I guess, should be eaten, but they're produced for being eaten, and their lives are miserable, and the consequences are miserable. And maybe I can even share, because I just showed it to, um, I just had it in my class for the other day. So if I can share screens, I can show you it's a very well-known plot. It's the mass of all vertebrates um, on the planet. Can you see that? So
It's
most
loading now.
can oh man.
Yes, it's up.
Okay, do you see the whole thing or just the presenter view?
A presenter view, but it's clear enough.
It's clear enough. Okay. So basically what you see here is the Earth's mammals by weight. And you can see that how much of it is cattle and then how much of it is human. So these are each dot equals 1 million tons. And how much of it is sheep, how much of it is pigs, how much of it is pets, how much of it is goats. And then you have the wild animals, the wild vertebrates. And so you can see that, we're just taking up all this space, just in this case, it's just by weight, but land, we're feeding half the food that we could feed ourselves in terms of cereals, in terms of crops that are edible by humans. We're feeding half of them to animals. It's a huge waste. It's so inefficient. So the question is not what happens to those animals, which yes, will get killed and eaten from horrible conditions. It's not reproducing that. It's like, okay, now we're not going to make any more of these animals just to eat ourselves. And this is absolutely necessary for climate. It's even more necessary for biodiversity. Agribusiness is the major driver of the sixth mass extinction. So this is just an absolutely vital thing to do. And eating vegan is not so, I mean, I can share my recipes. It's not such a bad thing to do. It takes a little while to get used to, but then it's fine. So it's really not such a hurdle. And it is vital for climate and biodiversity. There is no way around it. And then there was another question about tourism and adrenaline industry. So I think the year-round mountains are actually quite a nice idea. Going for walks, I mean, in terms of climbing, and I mean, in Switzerland, we're very spoiled, but I think every country is able to have every country, every landscape is able to have its own really interesting kind of sports and activities all year round, depending on the climate conditions, if you have the right equipment. So, whether it's bicycling and you can have dirt bicycling, you can have mountain biking, whether it's climbing, whether it's via ferrata, whether it's just walking, doing whatever, going swimming in the lake when I mean, I'm on the edge of Lake Geneva and Lake Léman, sorry, and people used to not swim in it when it was winter. And during COVID, people decided they couldn't go to Thailand anymore. So they started going swimming in the lake, and people still go swimming in the lake all the time. It's really fun all winter long. So they're cool things to do no matter where. And I think that we should really be thinking much more about tourism as something that we do locally and in a much more sort of interesting and convivial way. I don't think that that's a huge problem. The other thing we can think about is making our cities places where we can do, these extreme sports or fun sports. Like there's no reason why a city should not be fun and not include physical activity and leisure activity within it.
And I think we have a very nice question to wrap up the discussion because we're getting close to 9. Corinne asks, when will be the next Marche Bleue? Because she really found it great, emotional, community, and all the movement. So Julia, if you want to share what was Marche Bleue and
Yeah.
if there's another one planned.
So thanks, Corinne. So the Marche Bleue was really a magical um, few weeks for the people. It was last year, mostly in April, I guess. And it was a women's march, but men were of course welcome as well. And the 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 idea was to march from Geneva, from the UN, all the way to Bern to the Place Fédérale. And we did it. I didn't even do the whole thing. I think I did about half of it. And some days we had maybe 30 people, and some days we had maybe 300 people. And it was just a very beautiful moment. I must say, it was a great feeling to start the day, and you know that you're just going to be walking with lovely people who want to take care and talk about climate. And I learned so much. It was great. However, it was also a lot of work and a lot of money. So I think one of the things to understand is that the Marche Bleue was an association that was founded and run mainly by Irene Wettstein and Etienne Staufelberg, and they put so much time and effort into this. It was months and months of work. The association had to hire like 3 or 4 people full time in order to coordinate the march and to make sure that we had food and places to stay and the permits and all of that stuff. And so it was really a lot of work. And so the idea was never for it to be something that would happen every year. But if somebody wants to put, a huge amount of fundraising and time and effort into something like that, I would definitely recommend it. It was a beautiful experience.
Great, thank you very much for that. I see some familiar faces here that are familiar with activism. So if some of you would like to organize the follow-up of the Marche Bleue, we might have a cool objective. Okay, I will say we thank Julia for all the answers. We have spanned really a lot from the climate situation, how does it look from a physical level, what are the projections, what we can expect in the coming years, to the economical point of view, how are things now, which are the limitations, the obstacles, where do we need to move, how quickly we need to move there, how this looks at, let's say, country and global level, and how it looks at the individual level, which changes we can take in our own life, how we can convince friends, colleagues, family to do small steps that could be reducing a bit their meat consumption, reducing a bit tourism in other continents, all these sort of things that we can do. So if it's okay for you, I will maybe ask you to activate your microphone and give a short applause to Julia, because I think it's cool to make her feel a bit of physical presence.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia.
Thanks everybody, and it's so nice to see familiar faces. By the way, I'm starting to recognize people through the camera. So, yeah, so it's just really lovely to see you again.
Cool. Then, Marie, if it's okay for you, I leave the floor to you. We wrap up this first part of the evening, but we still have an optional part for those who want to stay. I leave it to you to explain.
Yes, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Julia, for your insights, and Emanuele also for the moderation. That was really great. And I'm here because I would like to present what we can do concretely if you want to be part of a movement trying to creating a movement that could act as a counter force to the fossil fuel industries and to the politicians that are supporting the status quo. So if you're interested to know more about this, I would be glad if you can stay with me. So my name is Marie. I'm working part-time for the movement called Act Now, which is organizing this talk tonight. And I've been an activist for the past 5 years. I've also been first in Extinction Rebellion, and now it's basically my job to do activism, which is actually, I feel very grateful to do this on a daily basis. And so I would like to present you a bit what is Act Now, what we are doing, what is our strategy, how do we think we could contribute to social change and create a movement enough powerful to make change in society. Yes, so I think we noticed this when we did the check-in. There is a lot of different emotions right now, also especially with everything what is happening around the world in the US with Trump and Musk and everything, and also again with the climate catastrophe, there's a lot of maybe anger and annoyance, as Julia mentioned as well, a lot of fear, maybe a lot of fatigue, because it's been also for some of us, it's been years since we've been active in climate activism, and it's not changing as much as we wish it would change. But also for me, doing activism, there are days where I feel a lot very optimistic, or also I feel a lot of courage and hope. So yes, I think it is a time where we have a lot of different emotions going on. And maybe I make one exception here is that we all share one need, and this is the need to act and the need to act now. So maybe like acting now, it seems a bit like an empty word for some. I don't know, like we have heard this for the past, I don't know, 30, 40 years. Like, isn't it something that like people keep saying we need to act? We need to act against the climate crisis. So what does that mean exactly to act now? And so at Act Now, we're trying to really bring it to very concrete stuff of what we can do as normal people living in Switzerland here and now. And for us, acting now is really about we want people to rediscover that we have the power to act. So it's really, it lays in our hands to create oh, sorry, I did something wrong. It really lays in our hands to act and to I'm sorry, I'm just trying to again share. Yes, right here. So yes, it's really in our hands to act in order to create a movement. And if we don't act, then there's gonna be no movement. And I really believe strongly that like alone we don't have a lot of power. We can do a few things which are very important, like for example eating vegan and not flying and everything, and these are stuff that I do also myself and they are really important. But it's also, there is a lot of power that we can get if we act collectively. And at Act Now, we want to create kind of a non-violent revolution in the face of the climate catastrophe. This is kind of a purpose. That's why the reason why we exist. We want to create spaces where people can understand the climate crisis, express themselves, also identify with a global movement. And yes, as I said, engage collectively and create new ways to act and new possibilities for this world. Yes, so this is our purpose. This is why Act Now exists. This is what we strive. And this is based on some assumptions that we made about the society we live in, and we noticed that yes, so the main assumption is that we all have like we all share the same needs. Like we have all, as a human being, we all want to feel safe. We all want to be listened to. We all want to belong to something bigger. We all want to have to make ourselves useful and to create things and to have fun. But the strategies that we developed so far are like strategies that we use to reach these needs. Sorry, there are strategies that are based on things that are not really good for us or for the planet. So I have a list here, for example. So the strategies that we develop in order to meet our own basic needs are like based on domination, on exploitation, on violence, on competition, hierarchy, prediction, power relations. And these are all strategies that have worked in the past in order to fulfill our needs, but they don't work neither for us and nor for the planet right now. And what we want is that we would like to, at Act Now, we would like to create kind of a place where kind of a space where we can create new ways of being and doing together. And these new ways, it's like based on way to like it's based mainly on nonviolence. I will go through it a bit deeper afterwards. It's about caring. It's about having relationships. It's about distributing the power. It's about listening. It's about feeling. It's about, yes, listening to others, listening to ourselves. And we believe that these strategies are much better for us in order to respond to the basic human needs that people have, we all share. So this is kind of a short explanation of why we do what we do, like the basis. And so this, I presented you the purpose, and we have also, I presented you what we think might be our theory of change. And the very concrete way to contribute to this is, we call it basically activism. And what we understand with activism, there are two things. So there are two parts, and I will go through the two parts. The first part is called the raised fist, and the second part is called the open hand. And this is also kind of a definition for nonviolence in our way. So this is what we do, and we want to do, like, this is our way to change society. Okay, so the first one is point levé, a raised fist, and it's kind of what you know probably from ACNOW mainly. These are the non-violent direct actions. So the actions that we do and that we did in the past, it always takes place in the public sphere. It's always à visage découvert, so we show our faces and we stand behind what we do. And it's a way to express ourselves in the face of the climate crisis in the public space. So, and with doing these actions, we want to shake up the public, we want to shake up the reality, and we want to shake up the status quo, like what is considered normal and accepted in the society. So through nonviolent direct actions, we shake up the status quo, and we raise awareness about the climate crisis in the public sphere. And we disrupt what is normal and what is accepted. So this is the first part of nonviolence, as like we understand it. And the second part of what we do in my work as activist, but like in many of you here tonight, it's not only about raising our fists, but it's really also about opening our hands. So meaning we really try to focus also on actively listening, supporting dialogue, and like supporting each other and welcome others. So yes, it is actually, we do this in all the activities within the ACNO community, is that the way we are organized with shared governance, the way we make decisions, the way we collaborate and cooperate with each others are really based also on these principles that in order, like we believe that when a person feels listened and without being judged or whatever, then this person feels safe, trusted and respected, and also ready to try new things. And this person then also might feel empowered. And so we don't try too much to convince people or to win over them, but we really believe in the power of dialogue and listening to the people and people's needs in order for them to feel empowered and then change within themselves. So this is really like the two parts of what we call activism, and nonviolence for us is really about like going to the public, telling the truth, saying what is going on in the face of the climate crisis. So not being scared about also telling the truth and being honest. And at the same time, really trying to create new ways to cooperate, listening to people, creating a dialogue. So it's really these two parts that are 50-50 in our daily work. And this is what we try to do as an activist, yes. So maybe a few numbers. So ACNOW is like at the beginning, it was Renovate Switzerland, and we also had a campaign called Liberate Switzerland. It is under this bigger movement of ACNOW. And so we exist like since 2022. And since this year, like since 2022, we trained 365 people in Switzerland in nonviolence. So there is a basic training. You can do one like half a day or a full day, and you learn the basics of nonviolence and also how to act in a situation like roadblocks or whatever, like how to act in when you're confronted with violence. It's really interesting if you also want to learn more about nonviolence. We also had like almost 650 participants in nonviolent actions in 2024 alone. We are an organization of over 80 volunteers all over Switzerland, which is really cool because you get to know people from all ages, from all corners of Switzerland. I met a lot of people through my engagement, and it's really also very nice to live this. Yes, there are like many people that never did activism before, that you would see them and you would not say these are activists, like typical activists. I don't know what the cliches are, but and so they decided, I don't know, at some point to organize their first nonviolent actions for the first time. And for me, it's really also very nice to see that people feel enough empowered to say, okay, let's do this together. We organize this funeral of the fossil fuel, le moteur à combustion, in the streets of Zurich last November. And it was the group of the local community of Zurich who which organized this. And it was really also really nice to see all those people getting active together collectively, creating a project, launching a project, and doing something. And it feels really good. And yes, and also like we had a lot of actions, but and we were a lot of in the media, but we also had a lot of talks and presentations in schools, in universities, during roundtables, cultural events. And these are all moments where we can talk about the climate crisis, where we can raise awareness, where we can motivate people to act. And this is, for me, the crucial thing, like really to put this topic all over again and again and again on the agenda, on the public agenda, on the political agenda, on the media agenda. So it's really but also talking is a very, very powerful way to act. Yes. So this is my very quick presentation of ACNOW, because I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I would like to invite you. I believe that we are all a bit of an activist in our art. And what I wanted to say is that, yes, there are like several ways to engage in ACNOW, for example. You can be at the forefront and participate in an action, but you can also be in the background, doing like admin work, supporting for the fundraising, supporting for the communication, organizing talks like this one tonight, being in touch with scientists, with other organizations. And this is all part of being part of a bigger movement, or engage collectively with people from all ages, from all over Switzerland. And so there are very like several ways to act, and this makes it very beautiful, in my opinion. And yes, if you're interested, I would like just to, there is one slide missing, of course, to invite you to do a quick, let me check, to do a quick quiz. I will just, maybe Emmanuel, if you have it on hand, that would be great. Otherwise, I will find
I
it.
don't have the link, but I can take over a moment if you want to
Oh,
buy you
no.
some time.
No, that's good. I have
Okay.
it. No. Okay, that was after the checkout. No. Yes, so on the left, you can scan the QR code with your phone. And on the left, you have the French one. And on the right, you have the German one. And it's a very short quiz that you can do. You have a very you have a few questions to find out more about what kind of activist you are. So maybe I can let you 2 minutes to fill the quiz, and afterwards we can do the checkout together. Yes. I can also send you a link. I give you 1 more minute and then we can close slowly. And I will give you more information about how to continue afterwards. Okay. Just checking. Okay, so I think we can slowly, I don't see your face, so I don't know exactly what you're going to, what you're doing, but I would suggest so you can slowly finish the quiz. And what I would like to do is that I would like to send you an email with some more information about, like, also with a link to the recording. If you want to share it, we will put it also on YouTube. And yes, so you can see this, and you can also reach out to us, contact at weactnow.org, for any questions you might have. And I would just like to open the floor again, because we're not that much. Maybe we can do a brief checkout. For those who want, you can put it in the chat. Otherwise, if you want to say it out loud, you can also take the floor. Just one word, not to make it too long, but how do you feel? And maybe also if you want to share your next steps with the others, what you're gonna do next. Yes, either in the chat or lifting the hand. Emmanuel, yes, someone needs to
Maybe I start to kick off. I'm feeling great. It's been a great evening. I've learned a lot. What I plan to do next is to organize the second talk of the series, because I think it's a nice way to engage people that will not otherwise be interested, because maybe they're not willing to be on the forefront, but they still have many questions to ask. So that will be my commitment, I said.
Anyone else? Otherwise, just put it in the chat.
I think for me, it's also nice to talk again with people and yeah, maybe help with developing materials or trying to see what works in terms of getting the word out, because the way we've been talking about this and the messaging has really been so distorted for so long.
Mm-hmm. Nice to read you also in the chat. Anyone else wants to share? Yeah, Marika. Nice. Beautiful. Good. Well, thank you, everyone. I also feel really good, and thank you very much, Julia, for sharing this time with us. It was really very interesting, and also nice to see you again. And yes, thank you to everyone who stayed that long, and I'm really happy to see you somewhere on the streets or whatever. Yes. Bye, everyone.
Have a good
See
evening.
you.
Bye.
Good evening. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. See you.
Mhm.